we eventually made this plan to head to Rhode Island, and it's a much longer story, but the key thing was in that period, my partner was unfaithful to me, and I just, when I finally learned, it was after months of suspicion and things. When I finally learned, I just went off a deep end that I had reached the level of despair that I think some people I think thought was not commensurate with the what had happened. And so about 3 years ago, I thought, maybe we need to do some sort of couples work to see if we can't get that behind us, because I really still struggle with that. And so we did some couples counseling, and my partner give these heartfelt apologies to me and things, and in front of the counselor, how does that work for you? Is that okay? Does that make it better? No, it doesn't make it better. And so after a while, the counselor suggested, maybe, why don't you go see this other guy? He specializes in trauma. And she she was aware of in her introductory forms and things, she asked about different things, and I had said that I had experienced some sexual abuse at one point in my life, and then some other things I'll get into. And so she said, maybe, there might be something more that's going on. And so I started working with this fellow, John. We talked and talked. We kept going back to talking more about what happened in Amherst. And after a while, an image kind of began to form in my head. And whenever we would talk about them, I would get this image in my head. And it's basically me inside this fence, I realize now that that fence became a metaphor for my life, that when I went through, or that's my interpretation. Any kind of trauma since then, I always kind of felt boxed in. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to take the trauma. There's no help. There's nothing to solve it. You're locked in that fence, and that's what you have to take. And there was one day when we really got into the experience in Amherst, and there was like a switch went on all of a sudden, like this switch, like there's like this other way of being. And that's when and our session ended. I just had this just a switch, and I said, at the end of the session, I said, John, I said, for the first time, I feel like I'm a person who experienced sexual abuse. I never thought of that. I mean, I never really thought of myself as that. And I always just thought it was kind of always like it's like looking at yourself in a television program in the past or something. It was not me. And I said, all of a sudden I have this urge, I want to learn about this. And he goes, well, take that slow, but yeah, I mean, try that. And so that's when I left that session, and I went to my office that day, and I just typed in sexual abuse of survivor or something like that, and boom, Bristol code pops up. I click on that, and I just looked at those faces, and I spent the rest of my day crying in my office, because it was seeing, I could see in those people myself. I had never seen that look anywhere. That I could see that they had an experience, or something that it was part of me. And so in the coming weeks after that, John and I continued talking about this, and And then there was another epiphany just a few weeks later when I began to see kind of how the timeline was just that, kind of a timeline, that there were roots in my experiences going all the way back to that day in Amherst. And I knew that was meaningful and that there was something there, because the day I walked out of John's office that day, it was a sunny day, and I kind of got out of the office and I looked around and I said, it's like as if someone took a lid off my life. Like I was in a kettle and someone had taken the lid off, and I looked around and like it's like the sky is there now. It wasn't there before. It was like this lid just was lifted. And that was maybe probably about a year ago, 9 months ago, when I just felt like the lid, the shadow of my life had kind of begun to lift, and I could see the track I was on, and that maybe there's a different way of thinking about yourself and being